Canada. Now, Canada, we're going to cover quite a bit in Canada, even though we've got, first, needless to say, the weather is getting far more brutal in the last few years. The polar vortexes, they're going to continue. But it seems, and I don't know because I don't get feedback from anybody in Canada, that's why I haven't concentrated too much on doing too many predictions anymore. But basically that I am seeing that snow is getting far more brutal and even higher, more denser and wetter, as if it sounds weird, but that's what I'm seeing. But also the snowdrifts are getting exceeding. I mean, it's ridiculous. The snowdrifts, they just seem they're getting far more snow than you used to even 2 years ago. If somebody can confirm that or tell me, you know, you got it wrong, that's fine. But just let me know. The other thing is earthquakes, and this is important because earthquake activity seems to be increasing in this section, but also throughout this lower ridge that I'm seeing, even to Toronto, and in here. I'm seeing a 5.5 around here and a 5.3 round about here near Toronto. Well, not near Toronto, but here. So these are going into fives, from 4 onwards to 5 and into 6.6 upwards. So you have to be careful on that one. Obviously, take care on that. Your summers seem to be taking longer to arrive. I hate to say it. I don't know if that's true. But also that you are finding that there's been a lot of clashes with the current government. A lot of people, there are getting to be even 3 factions, not 2 factions, but 3 different factions developing in Canada for political, and that they're very vocal. One is far more militant, I see, so you have to be careful, but that militant one seems to be very aggressive. So be careful of that and see what they do by September, I'm afraid. There will be 3 terrorist attacks, significant. I believe they're small, but they're well controlled by the police. But I do see 3 attacks happening. And it's far more on random individual acts that are coming in of violence than anything else. So be warned about that. There's a near attack on the parliament, but I think that should be caught just in time or just about when it's happening. So that's basically it for Canada at this time. Thank you for joining me if you have time to watch it. Involved in the whole thing, they're not shot, all of them, but they are part of that. So just be some kind of institution or something. All right. This is typhoons and super typhoons. There were, I think there was said 5 super typhoons that hit Asia, which is quite frankly horrific because they're not small. They're, I mean, literally a widespread area. And I'm seeing at least 5 super typhoons that are going to hit. So, and they're mainly, I hate to say it, they're all, and let me just shrink it a bit more, they're going to really hit in these areas here, here, in the Philippines, and here. And they kind of cross over here. There's one that's kind of crossing over, but it really hits here. So that super typhoon area is pretty brutal, but they're coming in like every other month. It starts at the end of February, the first one, and then there's one in kind of towards the end of April, probably the beginning of May, definitely June, around about the 26th, 25th, 26th, and August 27th. Then there could be another one in late September into October, but these are also typhoons as well. But the first ones I mentioned are really super typhoons. There are other typhoons hitting, and they'll go through right through November 28th of next year. So be careful of that, and sadly they're going to be far more brutal, the super typhoons. They're probably going over even 2 I see are going over the records that they've established before on the how fast they are and how high they go, the wind velocity. Anyway, I'm so sad because it comes in with rain that is flooding and killing and just total devastation as well. You really have it's worse. Sometimes you wonder what's worse. A typhoon is a hurricane, but it's just called typhoon there. But here it's a category, and it's kind of going over that category 5 in areas. Okay, that's just typhoons for Asia. I'm just covering this small area here, and just to let you know, it's pretty interesting where I am seeing, yes, I'm afraid, a 6.6 to maybe a 6.9 earthquake in Japan. And it's just, sorry, it's bouncing around here. In Japan, off the coast of Osaka, things like that here. But it's really also in Tokyo. So there are going to be more earthquakes. Could push out a tsunami towards America, but and that's a 6.9 one. But I hope I'm wrong with that one. And then it's going to be affected by at least 2 of the super hurricanes, this area, just to let you know, and Vietnam and all the other countries too. So be careful, and I'm not going to be spending too much time on those. Okay, that's it. Thank you. I'm covering monsoons and flooding here because basically, and I'm sorry, this thing is moving here, but basically we're going in monsoonal, where it's going to be flooding from here in this whole section here. Low-lying areas, even in Singapore and there in Malaysia, all of that is getting flooded. The monsoons are pretty brutal. I'm seeing Sri Lanka really getting devastated too, and across here, this middle portion here in Sri Lanka. But basically, this whole area is being inundated with flooding, where it's worse monsoon weather than they've had in maybe about 20 to 25 years. low-level beaches and flooding in those areas as well. So be careful, please. Take precautions. If you know it's going to rain and it's forecasted, try and get to higher ground instead of, I know that you're losing property and stuff like that, but it's better than losing lives, okay? Sorry to say that, but that monsoonal weather is going to be affecting quite a bit. Excuse me, I hope that helps. Now this one is really for Papua New Guinea and a few other areas. And that is, this year will get flooding, but the flooding is going to be here. And in New Zealand, it's far more, sorry, this thing is shaking. It's far more in this area, Auckland, Christchurch here. So that is something that is coming off the mountains. I see heavy, heavy snow here too, by the way, in your winter. But it's really in this area where it's going to be flooding, and that's not going to be pretty too. That's going to be pretty bad, but not as bad as Australia's going to be. I'll talk about New Zealand a bit more later. Tasmania again, and that's going to be in this area here, flooding. Hobart is not as bad, but does get flooding, okay? And what have I got? I've got Vanuatu, and that's just going to be, again, Solomon Islands, all of that. They're all going to have earthquakes like crazy. Same thing, I'm afraid. It's very, very unstable there. Fiji, there's going to be a 7.6 going on there. That's going to be hard, and that's because this land mass is still shifting badly. Papua New Guinea, same thing. The flooding is not as prevalent here as it is in Australia, but you're getting a lot of fires here that you've not really experienced before, so be careful, okay? Now Australia, we'll talk in the next one bit. Oops. We're going to cover the Pacific, and this is where I usually go into Papua New Guinea, Australia, a bit of Indonesia, but really New Zealand, and this area here basically that I cover. And I have quite a few people who have been following me, surprisingly, in Australia, and following of what I've been saying in the last few years. Now, I will say that the monsoons I talked about from this area, and I'm not talking typhoons, the typhoons are going to come in here as well and be affect you here towards Queensland. There's a lot of depressions, tropical depressions, that are going to affect rain on that way. But basically, let's cover quite a bit on this. Papua New Guinea and New Zealand, I'll do a bit, obviously cover that one, Tasmania. So first of all, let's go into the weather. And I had also, I had a few responses, not a lot, but a few responses from Australians who are giving me on the fires, and you were devastated. I do have a map somewhere about how many fires you've had, and it was as if Australia went on fire. And I believe all the areas I mentioned did get hit with fire, unfortunately. But I'm seeing that the fires are going to be in more, the concentration that is this year coming is going to be in a concentration where it's going to be like a crescent, but here, and that's the concentration, and here near Perth, but in that area that the concentration of fires are going to be. So even though quite a bit of it's devastated already, just to let you know that there are going to be a lot of fires. What I'm worried about is are the flooding. The floodings are going to be quite devastating. The weather seems to be getting more intense, and with tornadoes I'm seeing coming in as well. But they are definitely going to hit you in Victoria, Adelaide. I mean, all the other little places here, but it's as if it's going low level here, and the flooding is just and it's not normal flooding. It's literally 2 to 4 feet of water coming in, and it's flooding massive areas. Rivers are breaking banks by 4 to 15 feet. I hate to say it. There are rivers that are breaking those banks and breaking records. So it's like it's not even an El Nino. I don't think we're in an El Nino anymore. But anyway, basically, it's like as if you've been hit by one. But you are going to get that coming in, I'm afraid. And that's on flooding, okay? Sorry, I guess I lied. I didn't leave you. I just want to let you know that, sorry, I'm trying to, on Australia, I do see quite a few tornadoes here. And that is what I'm worried about. There are tornadoes around that are hitting certain, I'm seeing a total of 5 tornadoes, even as an EF3 coming in. So I hope I'm wrong, and I think it's around here, but it's an EF3, but there are others, about 2 smaller ones. There may be as much as another 3 EF0s. All right, so be careful. All right, thank you. We're talking New Zealand here, and this, I talked briefly about fires with the other one, but quite frankly, regarding New Zealand, I am more concerned because I'm going to pan out here. It seems there's some kind of connection with the Vanuatu, Solomon Islands, that the earthquakes are affecting in a kind of crescent shape. I know this is part of, I think that's part of the landmass. But anyway, I had to check on that, I'm sorry. But it seems to be shifting, and that's why I'm worried about New Zealand. And they are going to get, and I haven't checked, and I think I was right, sadly, you're getting far higher earthquakes now. There will be a 7, that I'm seeing, a 7.2, and that's more here in the lower portion of New Zealand. And I'm seeing 6.6s and 5s and 4s and 3s and 2s, and you know, it's really, the activity is more prevalent or starts up in Madeira after March next year. So just be careful, please. I know you're used to it, but it doesn't mean to say that you're used to it, that you can just, you know, flick it off your shoulder. So emergency supplies, meds, things like that that you need. Please keep safe on that one. And you will be, it would be I would say it's far more intense year for earthquakes for New Zealanders, okay? I do see 2 somewhat, it's like half-baked terrorist attacks in New Zealand, but, and this is just to stir it up, to be honest. But for the most part, you're very lucky. There's no, the flooding I went over already on another video. Please check that one out. And basically, I don't see anything else. Politically, I think you're pretty sound. You're very lucky. But you still have a lot of, you know, there are certain issues where there are a lot of people who, the immigration, people want to come there despite earthquakes, etc. And you've got a beautiful country, just like all the Pacific as well. And you're finding that a challenge. I can see that, and that's going to be kind of a political bone of contention in November next year with your government. Anyway, that's it, and I hope, keep safe, and blessings to all of you. We're going to cover Europe quickly, and I'm not going to be in depth as before. I don't believe people are really interested anymore, but I am seeing, unfortunately, a lot of, let's go into the terrorist activity. And I said, sadly, there will be several in London, and I'm seeing just one in Scotland that's significant. There are going to be other little small ones, but not as big. But in London, just outside London too, there will be 2 to as many as 4, maybe 5 attacks. Excuse me. So in the Netherlands, Belgium, there's going to be about 2 or 3. And I see that it's ISIS still very prevalent there. France, there's more riots in France than anything else, than more terrorism. But there are 2 ISIS attacks, or Taliban/ISIS. Taliban seems to be getting active far more this year. So be warned, and that's near about Belgium, Paris, Germany, and maybe in Netherlands. Spain, there's going to be far more, what I'm seeing, there's a duality in a way of floods and in certain areas around about here where it's actually very parched, and water problems where they're really finding water hard to get in there as well. Then we're seeing other, I'm just going to cover little countries too, but earthquakes, we're seeing far more in Kazakhstan. All of this area is going to get hit with anything from in the mountains to maybe a 7.2 to a 7.6. And that's going to be quite devastating, I hate to say. That's going to be later in the year, late August to September. I'm not going to cover Russia because I don't think anybody listens there, unfortunately, but fortunately. Anyway, so Georgia is going to have a lot of riots, I'm afraid. There's going to be a uprising there. There's going to be against the government and what the status quo is there. Bulgaria too, Serbia, things like that. Then Moldova, I hate to say it, but riots everywhere. Ireland, UK, Sweden even, but it's far more of something to do with a law changing in Sweden. And Norway gets affected by that. But Finland, there's more earthquakes there than anything else. Volcanoes, sorry, not earthquakes, but volcanoes and things like that. But there are 2 mass shootings there in Finland, I'm afraid. Italy, let's see, and Greece, let's move down. And I'm talking about the volcano there, but earthquake activity, I haven't even checked, to be honest. What I had said last year, I'm doing a quick skimming, I suppose, on this, because I don't know if anybody is really listening in Europe or wants to hear this. But there is going to be one hurricane that's going to be pretty brutal, and it kind of will brush, or it looks as if it's coming into Spain and Portugal, but that's like an F4, category 4, but this whole coast is being affected, so be careful. Greece, there's a lot of political rife and all kinds of things going on with the, joining the union, being a part of the union, etc. That's going to be in contention there. So earthquakes, I'm seeing one significant one, a 6.2 just outside Rome. So be careful of that. and a lot of earthquake activity around this whole basin. Okay. Earthquake, sorry, I'm going to stop it there. I think we're good. I'm going to cover additionally in Europe some flooding and some also fires, but it's the flooding I'm a bit concerned of. And that is because of United Kingdom, that they're going to get far more brutal snow and flooding, I suppose. But basically, this whole area, even Spain, is getting a lot of intense snow, and even snow drifts that are the UK is getting pretty brutal, and that's going to be at the end of February to March. All the other countries are going to be in that system. It's as if there's a brutal cold front that moves in like that and just envelopes the whole of Europe into a blanket of deep snow, and it's freezing snow and really brutal, and I'm really worried about the older people. Again, I'm going to mention, as I did in the American video, that it is, please look out for anybody who's alone, can't get to the shops. It's wise, even if you don't even use it, is to go and load them up and yourselves with canned goods or canned food and water if they don't have. There's going to be a lot of devastation. There's flooding following this because the snow, but there's a lot of flooding actually I'm seeing a lot in Russia, but there's also flooding throughout certain countries here in Europe that I really am worried about. Even flooded fields here, even though there's going to be a shortage of water here, there's flooding here in Spain and France. Okay, so watch for the wine vineyards and stuff like that. So that's sad. Fires, and I'm seeing them all over the place throughout Europe, where it's extreme heat, but it's in the country, but here in London, I mean outside, and there's fires in the moors in Ireland and everything else. Sorry, I'm just looking at something. In Ireland, there's going to be quite a few too. So other than the brutal weather, there's a lot going on. There's going to be earthquakes also in England and in Ireland additionally as well. So just to be careful of what's going down with, especially with the flooding. Rain, it's like monsoonal rain in certain areas, and it's a band that's going like that throughout Europe, and that's in late July, and it looks like it's pretty bad, where it's flooding most of London, Dublin, around there, and all through these countries here, and bringing in tons of rain, and it's deluges, and it's like a monsoon, but it's lasting longer, so please be careful. All right? I'm going to touch on volcanoes here, and I believe a few of the ones that I did say, I haven't got time to check all the predictions, needless to say, but I believe they did go, and I'm seeing 2 new volcanoes that have been dormant for about, one is about 20, 25 years, and the other one for a few hundred has come active, and that's more scary in that. And I do see more activity in Finland, Norway, in some of the volcanoes there. Alaska, needless to say, is going to be a bit more active, and I'll talk about earthquakes later because that's associated with it. And of course around Italy and Greece, those did go active earthquakes too. So I am seeing Mount Vesuvius actually getting a bit more active, but that's in late July, August. Be careful. And there are other islands obviously going active, the volcanoes. So it's as if there's a disturbance or there's more activity, earthquake activity that's going on that is actually contributing to a far more deeper disturbance with the volcanoes. All right? Just to cover on the flu is going to be a bit more brutal. A lot more people, sadly, flu/pneumonia, are going to be dying from it in the way of they're not realizing it or catching it in time. So please look up the symptoms for both flu and pneumonia. Don't get paranoid, but especially for older people and children, you have to be careful. Don't let it, and if you just intuitionally feel that they're just passing you on and saying, oh, you'll be okay, go and see somebody else. Follow your intuition. Again, don't be paranoid, but it is going to be an aggressive flu season, and it will last until end of June into July, this flu season. So don't think it's just over. So if you are going out, and you have to be obviously food shopping or whatever, and people are sneezing, either wear a mask. If you don't want to do that, please take some vitamins, or even make sure you wash your hands thoroughly, and just don't touch your nose or your eyes and things like that. Just basic health, I'm sure you know about it. Thank you. Africa, at least the continent, it's been a horrible year of devastation, and I know there's been loss of life, huge loss of life, 250 million plus people in floods and everything in the east, and then there's the opposite where it's devastation because there's no water. So it's a horrible dichotomy, but anyway, this is what I see, and my heart goes out to all of them, and my prayers to everyone who's in a horrible situation, and those privileged to have a roof over your head. Really think about these people who've literally living in hell at the moment with nothing, not even food or clothes. So please be open to that, and your Noni prayers and help hopefully gets to them. What I do see, though, that the flooding effects will decline eventually, but there is one more system coming in of flooding or heavy rains that's going to affect mostly the upper portion here, and that is at the end of February. But after that it starts waning a bit, and this actually, there's not flooding but more rain here, even though I know the glaciers have been receding as well. So there are, obviously in the higher regions, and that's why the water is not there for certainly the animals, the devastation there, but definitely for the humans, families and that. So basically, round about end of June, July, recovery starts, but it's saturated ground, and it's just trying to get aid to them. So basically, that's really the worst nightmare one could imagine. And I know I had talked about other areas where monsoons are going to be quite devastating too, other than typhoons, monsoons, and hurricanes. So please, if you can help, please try and help. Anyway, that's all I'm going to talk to on this. Thank you.